Welcome to GrowthMasters, where we crack the code on driving and accelerating B2B revenue growth. I'm Sankar Sundaresan, the founder and CEO of SkyGeni, and I'm thrilled to be your host on this journey. Each episode, we sit down with industry titans, revenue superstars, and C-level executives to dive deep into how they mastered the art and science of revenue acceleration. Buckle up as we learn about their battle-tested strategies, playbooks and tools, and uncover the secrets to building high-performing revenue teams capable of driving and accelerating growth across all economic environments. Welcome to GrowthMasters. Our guest today is Mahesh Shah, the Chief Executive Officer of CoreTrust. CoreTrust is the industry-leading aggregator that leverages the combined purchasing volume of its members to negotiate preferential pricing and terms across more than 80 indirect spend categories. By leveraging its scale and unique compliant model, CoreTrust delivers price advantages no other purchasing collective can match. CoreTrust has more than 3,000 members from all of the major verticals: retail, manufacturing, hospitality, and finance. CoreTrust is part of the Blackstone private equity portfolio. Mahesh has 20 years of experience in the technology industry, spanning various roles and functions, from product development and management to data strategy and security to mergers and acquisitions and divestitures. As the CEO of CoreTrust, Mahesh is responsible for driving the strategic vision and execution with a focus on innovation, customer satisfaction, and business growth. He is passionate about leveraging the power of technology to deliver value to customers and stakeholders and to transform culture and operations. In addition, Mahesh serves as a board member at Blue Terra and Bright Children, a nonprofit focused on education and climate. Mahesh joined CoreTrust from CDK Global, where he served as the Chief Product and Technology Officer. Previously, Mahesh held leadership roles at DXC, HP, and IBM. Mahesh, welcome to GrowthMasters.
Thank you.
Can you give our audience an introduction to CoreTrust?
Yeah, so CoreTrust is, as you described, so think of it this way, every company needs to buy a whole bunch of indirect items in order to just operate, everything from insurance and benefits all the way through to like office supplies, but includes travel and all kinds of things. And these are just basic goods and services that they need to operate as a company. And that's where we play. We provide all of those services to them. So think of us like the Costco for business is the way I like to think of it. We have people that join us as members, so think of like the Costco membership. And then what we do is we work with suppliers and we curate, the best deals, the best categories with best terms for our members. And then they get to, when they want to buy things from office supplies or insurance or travel programs or facilities, they'll come through us, through our membership program, and they'll get access to these great opportunities and these great offerings. So that's the best way to describe us. We are kind of like the Costco for business. Every company needs this stuff.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you what gets me excited as I think about these things is companies spend about 20% of their revenue on these indirect items just to operate. And they spend a significant amount of time just getting it done. Whereas instead of focusing, they can spend more time focusing on their strategic priorities.
Right.
This is just something that they need to get done. And our goal is to make this as simple and as fast as possible for them with the best savings they can get.
Got it. Got it. Great intro, by the way. Thank you.
Sure.
You're not the CEO of CoreTrust, but can you take us back to the beginning and give us a peek at your career journey? How did your experiences at companies like CDK, DXC, and HP prepare you for the top job at CoreTrust?
So, I think one of the things that I started with that I thought was really beneficial for me was I started in consulting, actually. I started in IBM consulting. And I think what it taught me there was to be thrown into different problems all the time and having to just figure it out. Because you're constantly thrown into a new business problem and you're constantly trying to learn and figure out very, very quickly. So the ability to adapt and learn quickly was I've always felt is one of the most important things to have. Um, I think I was also beneficial in being able to um, operate in many different areas of a business. So in sales and product and engineering and operations, in marketing, and getting a chance to really spend time in all of these different areas. But I've always felt the more you get to spend in many different domains, the better you get. One experience in particular, I think, as I progressed for a while, was very um, really a catalyst for me in many ways. Is I got to start a startup at HP at one point, and that startup really taught me a lot. It taught me a lot in terms of how to be scrappy and building up something from the ground up, while also leveraging the assets of a bigger company. And in a sense, that's what a private equity company is. You get to leverage the assets of the larger private equity firm while you're scaling and being scrappy to get certain things growing.
Right.
And I would say that was really, really informative for me in my career and how far you can go. One of the key things I learned there is the benefit of a channel and having a fantastic channel. Um, you can I learned through that is you can have a great product, but if you don't have a channel, you won't get anywhere. And you can have, but if you have a great channel and you have products that are meaningful out there, you can do a lot with it. And so that was one of the big learnings that I got from my career.
Um, Very interesting, Mahesh. Very interesting perspectives. As we mentioned earlier, CoreTrust is a Blackstone private equity portco. How does private equity ownership shape how you think about your revenue acceleration strategy?
Yeah. So the good thing about private equity is if I kind of think of three tiers, right? You've got public companies, private equity companies, and VC backed companies. Um, Private equity is kind of in between those two, right? So from a risk standpoint, they're willing to take more risk than a public company in many things that we do, but not as much as a VC backed company. They're not looking for a 1 in 10 shot. They're looking for a much higher potential of success in what they do. The second thing that I think is positive here is so they have a higher risk appetite than public companies, so that's great. The second thing is um, they're not short-term focused, they're very medium to long-term focused. And what that means is, hey, if you need to invest and it's going to make a lot of sense and you're taking a bit of a risk, that investment is well worth it, even if you're going to miss a couple of quarters, as long as it's going, you can clearly see a line of where it's going to go, have an impact in driving the growth of the company overall. So, so I know you asked the question about time, but I think it's important to calibrate the risk appetite as well as the short-term and long-term focus. Um, Overall, I would say those are probably the two biggest things. And what it has also pushed us to do is you're constantly trying to ensure when you're under a PE company is that everything that you do is driving value in some way. And if it isn't, you're constantly reassessing and saying if it's not driving value, stop and shift, right?
Right.
So that everything you do is driving value. And you also realize that you don't have 20 years, you don't have 5 years. You've got, you, we don't like to talk about the time horizon, but that there is a time horizon on these things.
Right.
And so the three things that I would kind of conclude with on this is the risk profile is different, and I like it much better than public. It gives you a lot more leeway. The short term versus the midterm is also important because it allows you to make certain decisions that
Right.
are good for the midterm for the company. And then I think three, you've always got this feeling of how do I ensure I'm driving value with every single dollar that I'm investing in this company. You're trying to make sure you don't have any throwaway in terms of what you're investing in order to get the maximum output within a few years.
Right. Right. That makes perfect sense. Um, as CEO, how do you instrument your organization, Mahesh, for delivering predictable and efficient revenue growth? And specifically, how do you take revenue targets, from the board and decompose them into pipeline creation goals for various revenue teams within CoreTrust?
So first, we are a company that is somewhere between a startup and a mature company. So we're somewhere in between. So starting with that lens, um, on the core business, which is kind of predictable and you know what's going on, I actually still try to focus on a few North Star metrics that we focus on because there's always all this noise coming in from all these different metrics and KPIs that you're looking at. But we try to focus on, hey, if there's a couple of things that are going well overall for the company, even the trend line is going to keep going up and down along the way. As long as it's moving up and to the right, then you're feeling good. And there are things like you can focus in on like customer satisfaction goals, employee satisfaction, customer acquisition, churn, and we have a few that we focus on as we're looking at our people that measure for us if we think that long-term people are using us more and more, our members and our customers are using us more and more.
Right.
And so I always start with those, right? Start at the top line. Don't confuse the story. Focus on the top few metrics. And then we almost define a tree below each one of those that tie to each one of the financial metrics and each one of those things so that everything is really tied to those top North Star metrics.
Right.
That's for the core business. Now, for the nascent side, and I think what we always try to do is plant a couple of bets in a few areas. Um, but on the nascent side, we're usually looking for similar metrics you would see in like a VC type
Mhm.
world, right? Are we getting new customers? Are we starting to see penetration? Um, and those are some of the areas that we focus on now as it pertains to growth and systematic growth.
Yes.
Um, we in addition to these North Star,
Right.
um, we look at what I call a lot of these hygiene metrics on an ongoing basis, which
Right.
are tied towards bookings, leads, and we decompose. We've got a pretty clear, I call it like a tree that shows us from the North Star metrics down to the lowest hygiene metrics, what's
Right.
required to move the needle. So, as an example, if revenue was one of your North Star metrics,
Mhm.
you know, you'd have multiple layers below that. You'd have, the financial revenue numbers coming in. You'd have bookings tied to that. You'd have leads, and then you have different types of leads. And we
Right.
we tend to look at all of those to see how they're pushing along and
Right.
impacting finally the North Star metric.
Right.
Now, this takes more and more data science.
Mhm.
uh, I will tell you that our business is not a SaaS business. It is a consumption-based business like an Amazon or Costco.
Right.
And so human behavior factors in as well in the work that we do. So it takes a lot of data science.
Got it. Got it. Now, setting goals is crucial, but tracking progress is almost as important, right? And how do you ensure that your revenue teams are building a robust quantity of pipeline in the right places to hit their revenue targets? And how do you track things like coverage, pipeline quality, and pipeline progression?
Um, so it's interesting you highlight that. We're spending a lot of time on it, and I don't think we've fully cracked the nut on this, candidly. We have been very lucky in many ways where we have a great channel, and one of our channels is fairly clear and systematic. We can clearly tell, like I can tell if I put in, you know, uh, one type of skill within the organization, roughly how much pipeline they will generate, and how much of that pipeline will convert into
Right.
bookings, which will then turn into profit, right? So we have that for one of our channels.
Right.
For the other channels, as we're expanding them, we're constantly experimenting. And where I'm always trying to get to is that systematic view
Mhm.
that shows us, like it does in our core business. Um, but we have all the regular tools in place, like Salesforce and everything else that gives us information. But I would say that it's a little bit of art and science to get to it, and I think we've got more work to do to get full coverage visibility beyond some of our core channels,
Right.
figuring out additional channels to continue to drive pipeline expansion. And by the way, most people I talk to, like I talk to other CEOs, we've got board members that are CEOs, and I talk to other CEOs. Most people I talk to haven't fully cracked this nut. Like,
Mm.
especially when you're trying to scale quickly,
Right.
depending on if you're a low growth company and you're large, there's one answer. But if you're a high growth company, which is how we view ourselves, a high growth company, and you're trying to scale quickly, it gets even more challenging because you're jumping into new ground
Right.
sometimes to build more pipe.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Now, looking at how you manage stakeholders, I'm curious to learn how you use data and insights to prepare for conversations with your board members and update them on your growth plans.
So, the board meetings are often these highly curated things that we spend a lot of time pulling together. But
Mhm.
what I will tell you is we have spent a lot of time leveraging AI in the work that we do. So we have a big data lake where we've loaded all of our transactional data. We've actually got our own, we call it Core Pilot. So we have our own Core Pilot
Right.
for all the data that we have in house. We have a great data team, and we are trying to make it so good so we can get to the point where every time any of us has questions on anything, it's hitting all of our data to get us dynamic answers to the questions that we have because the nature of our questions keep changing. As
Right.
we learn more, we ask more questions and it leads to different paths.
Right.
We've got the pre-canned reports and stuff, but we're really trying to make it to be much more of a dynamic approach to how we operate
Right.
on the data side. And we're using this core pilot for many things too, even sales teams, because we have many categories, right? When all the content is loaded for our sales team so that when they're talking to their members, if there are questions, they can
Right.
literally check in core pilot and then it's giving them the answers very quickly related to
Right.
sales collateral and everything else. So we're really trying to make it the heart of how we answer questions, and that then forms the basis of how we present the answers.
Mm, got it. Got it. Now, looking inward, how do you use leading indicators, for conversations with your CRO, CMO, CFO, and your product teams, and to drive alignment between them so that they're all essentially, singing off the same sheet of music, if you will?
I think it was really important for us to get aligned. We spend time together as a team every quarter, where we spend a lot of time going through aligning on our goals and things. And we establish some key leading indicators that we aligned to as a team, um, in order to ensure that we are not, going off down different paths and arguing about things.
Right.
Um, so as an example, we got together and we all agreed that there is, pipeline building is one of our big things that we are pushing on, right? And who's got accountability for that? By the way, this is not always easy. Human dynamics always come into play, but
Yep.
getting together, making sure that you're constantly focusing on the company as the
Right.
first objective. So we call it ship first, then shipmates and then self, right? Like you've always got to be focusing on the ship first
Right.
and what is needed in order for the ship to be afloat and moving fast.
Hmm.
And we definitely focus on that dynamic um, within our groups. And then we have a one pager which lists out the goals and the KPIs to get to a ship first mentality.
Got it. Got it. Now, every journey has its hurdles. What were some of the biggest challenges you faced in driving predictable revenue growth in your career, and how do you navigate them?
Um, one thing I've learned is like you really have to spend time with people that know the business well. So if you're starting in the business for the first time or you're in a new business, really understanding it well and how revenue accrues, what customers are looking for. I would tell you that the times where I ran into hurdles is because I did not understand at a very deep level some of the nuanced needs of a customer,
Mm.
um, or how the business cycle works. Because just spending time in that business and really understanding it fully, and I think that the best way you can address this is ask a lot of questions of the people that have been there for a long time.
Mm.
There's a tendency to go in and think you're smarter and can get things done fast, and you can. But I think it's really important to understand the customers really, really well. I know this seems obvious,
Mm.
but there are often little nuances that are missed because sometimes you're not asking the right questions.
Right.
We go at it very quickly, and we don't spend enough time answering the right questions of how they're operating and why they're operating this way. And then spending time with the people in your team that have really been there for a long time and have seen multiple cycles.
Right.
There have been times where you're sitting in a room and you see the numbers shift, and you've
Hmm.
got people that have been there for a while and they're like, yep, we see this every 2 years, right? And they know the cycle of the business. And so they know what to expect and what not to expect. Um, and I think really spending time with those folks and your customers would be my recommendation.
Perfect. Now, like me, you started your career in a largely offline world, and now you are a CEO in the age of AI. How do you see the world of data-driven growth changing? And specifically, what capabilities do you see as being most impactful, for the growth function in any company?
Yeah, kind of goes back to some of what I was saying with Core Pilot in a sense. And what I mean by that is it just allows us to be, the speed of learning is so much faster than it was before. And if I would reflect on just my own education, I started with learning the Dewey Decimal System in the library and
Hmm.
having to go find a book. And when you want to go, so that speed of information, like when you have a question and then have an answer, that
Right.
period was so long before, right? And then you ended up with the web, search capabilities, et cetera. And it keeps shortening that cycle time in order for you to learn something. Now, AI is just putting that on steroids, right? It's like rocket fuel thrown on top of it. And the more you can embed that in different parts of your business, and I really think it's almost any part of your business, whether it be your financial analysis and FP&A side of things, whether it be your revenue cycle side and sales cycle and what your customers are looking for and how you can shrink your sales cycle time. Um, churn analysis. There's so
Hmm.
many parts of the business that we spend a lot of time churning through data to get answers. And imagine if you take all that down like to a fraction of what it was before. The agility of a business to operate in this dynamic world, like it gives right now you have a period of time where you have an edge, right? If you take full advantage of it, because you have a lot of companies that are not.
Hmm.
And if you take advantage of that cycle time improvement on question to answer, I mean, there's so many possibilities. It's a matter of focusing where you go drive that. We have been very focused on the sales and the finance side. The sales and improving our member side, their satisfaction as well as their ability to get things fast and easy, as well as our financial analysis side. And I think we're just focusing on two at the moment,
Hmm.
but we continue to expect to expand that into like customer support
Right.
and technology build out as well. So even our coders today are, certainly leveraging, GitHub and some of the benefits of code writing there as well. So there's a lot of benefit these days with it.
Great. And it almost kind of takes me back to the days when we used to talk about overclocking a PC to make it,
That's
you know,
right.
faster than the
You're
specs were.
overclocking a human.
Exactly. Exactly. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Mahesh, thank you very much for the wonderful conversation. I'm sure, the audience would find your perspectives incredibly enlightening and valuable. Thank you very much for your time and for being a guest here on Growth Masters.
Yep. Thank you, Shankar.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
That's a wrap for this episode of Growth Masters. Remember, growth is a journey, not a destination. Keep experimenting, learning, and scaling. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit that subscribe button and share it with your fellow revenue leaders. Until next time, keep on growing.